You're about to meet the innovators and influencers who are restoring the Judeo-Christian foundations of our culture right here on The Patrick Coffin Show.
And now, here's your host, Patrick Coffin.
Yes, indeed. Welcome aboard. I am Patrick Coffin. Let's dive straight into the topic and the guest. The topic is Catholicism and capitalism, what the church teaches about, means of production and capital and charity versus justice. All that's the sweet spot. Our guest is Tim Busch. He's been a practicing attorney in Orange County, California for the past 35 years and is the founder of the Busch Firm, which specializes in high net worth estate planning, tax, and religious organization representation. Tim's also the founder and CEO of Pacific Hospitality Group, which owns and manages 8 hotels across Southern California, from Santa Barbara on down south. He's also the co-founder of the Magis Institute with Father Robert Spitzer. Magis administers the Reason and Faith Center, using modern astrophysics to prove the existence of God. Tim Busch and Father Spitzer also co-founded the Napa Institute, an annual intellectual apostolic conference preparing Catholics for the next America. Mr. Tim Busch, welcome to the Patrick Coffin Show.
Thank you.
Now, your daily schedule must begin at 1 a.m. and end at midnight the next day. I'm looking at all the things that you've founded or run or are affiliated with. Maybe we can start the list with the Busch Firm and Pacific Hospitality Group. You're also a vinophile. That would be a lover of wine, not LP albums. And education as well, J. Sarah, St. Anne's, and so on. I would think we could have another conversation on how you structure your day and how you manage time.
Sure. Well, I am a trained lawyer and CPA, and I've been practicing for about 37 years. And we represent wealthy families, create foundations, and do tax and legal work. We stay out of the courts. That's my main goal. Mm-hmm. Then I got in the hotel business about 30 years ago, and today that's the biggest business we own. It has 12 hotels and 3,000 associates, and it's the backbone of really my business. The secular business is the hotel company.
They don't pay you to golf yet?
Not yet. Yeah, they better not.
Let's press rewind, if we could, back to Busch's Market in southeast Michigan. Was that a family business that started out there?
Yes. In 1975, my father, I was just getting out of undergrad, and he was going through a business transition. So I worked with him and a couple of my brothers, and we bought some supermarkets that he actually started many years before, but they were involved in another company that had bought them. Mm-hmm. And we went forward to now we have 15 supermarkets in southeastern Michigan. They're high-end, prepared foods, becoming more lifestyle type supermarkets, and it's the largest family chain in Michigan.
Mm-hmm. The term social justice has kind of become almost a sub-religion in some circles in the Catholic Church. I've been kind of an amateur student of this term and Catholic social teaching generally, and I understand that it was an Italian Jesuit who coined the term back in the 1840s. He was one of the founders of the journal Civiltà Cattolica back in 1850. And his famous student became Pope Leo XIII, who wrote Rerum Novarum, of course. And I wanted to ask you about this interplay between Catholic social teaching, understood as that the economy is meant to serve man, not the other way around, but also making a profit and beginning businesses and bringing value to people. For some folks, these are contradictory. These are almost opposed. You don't believe that?
Well, that's the problem is you go back to Rerum Novarum and you can kind of see that he and all the popes beyond him have fought what is otherwise termed as socialism or communism, or better, more collectivism. Mm-hmm. And this is the book that really kind of opened my eyes on it is Michael Novak just recently wrote a book called What Social Justice Isn't, and he talks about the formation of Rerum Novarum through this gentleman, through this priest. And I think what it's easy for people to jump to the conclusion that if you're wealthy, you must have got it dishonest. Yeah. It's easy to jump to the conclusion that if you have wealth and somebody else needs it, you should give it to them through redistribution. Mm-hmm. And really, we're doing nothing for those people. We're stealing their dignity as a person and in being by depriving them of the right to earn a living and to co-create with God. So this is where it all breaks down and where we get into a lot of arguments. And even this current Holy Father, he has always established this. We got to make sure that people have a place at the table. They've got to have a certain fundamental rights to the law to protect them. They must have access to private property. They must have, now with the internet, they do have access to resources that otherwise wouldn't be available to them before.
I'm not sure if you've read the book, The Bottom Billion by Paul Collier. The subtitle is Why the Poorest Countries Are Failing and What Can Be Done About It. And essentially, it's piggybacking on what you just said, that the nanny state, socialism, and the sort of, I guess, warmed over communist model that we see in places like Venezuela, these are famous failures. It does not help populations to not extend to them training so that they can fish rather than just receiving fish from others all day long. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the fundamental conversation. South America, unfortunately, through other Jesuits, has really gone the wrong way here. Some examples in South America that are very productive is Chile. Chile is really inspired by the University of Chicago Milton Friedman model. And it's thriving as a capitalistic country. Venezuela, which was one of the richest countries in South America in the 70s, is a complete broke. It's bankrupt and through nationalization. What they miss, and I'm not as a scholar saying this, but as just a pragmatic, they miss the fact that man is born with original sin and they're self-interested. And if you're not going to, the market system is self-interested. So you have to, it's a check and balance system by automatically. And now, are there situations where the market doesn't serve everybody well? Yeah, but frankly, it's because over-regulation, not under-regulation. And we've seen this in our country. We're regulating the small business guy out of business. And it's guys like me that have lawyers and accountants. We can actually navigate our way through this regulation when the people that we want to get in business that are creating new jobs can't, because they don't have the resources to pay the people to navigate through regulation. So we have to cut regulation. We have to let more small business people create jobs. And in doing so, we're going to raise up the poverty level. The good news is, since 1975, 80% of those people living under the poverty level have been lifted above. And it's been done through the capitalistic system in third world countries like China, Africa, and India. It's a fact. I didn't make this up. It's a fact. And people just need to recognize it and get more of it, because more of free market is going to lead to the prosperity of mankind, not just above the poverty level. But Charles Koch says, we're operating in this country 50,000 median income. He says we can be operating at 200,000 median income in 20 years if we just get rid of the regulation, the crony capitalism, the corporate welfare, and focus on free market capitalism.
And by free, is there an implicit asterisk? But free meaning not laissez-faire, profit above everything else. That's not the direction you're going here.
No, I studied laissez-faire when I was in high school, as a matter of fact, and it's a little bit of a utopia, no different than let's have everybody have exactly the same amount of money. It's a utopia. There is original sin, and we have to monitor the system. What we cannot do is monitor the system to protect 1% of the populace and hurt 99% of the populace. And that's what happens with, the anti-Enron. Was Enron bad? Absolutely. But if you over-regulate Enron through Sarbanes-Oxley, now you burden the entire economy with ridiculous regulations that's costing billions of dollars that otherwise could go to produce new jobs that really help people, not just regulate. So there's better ways to do it than Sarbanes-Oxley or Dodd-Frank or whatever it has to be.
Is that what Charles Koch would call bad profit, the Enron scenario?
Well, he would call Enron bad profit because it was fraudulent profit. I think what he refers to as bad profit is somebody who gets a contract from the government to make work, and the infamous solar panel program where there's $500 million wasted away because it was government welfare, where government is picking winners and losers. They've picked losers as being for-profit universities, so they're proceeding to gang up on them and regulate them and run them out of business. And non-profit universities, those are okay. He would say that the government should not be playing a role of picking winners and losers. They should not be subsidizing auto companies that are going broke. Like General Motors was, Chrysler Corporation. They should let them go broke and let private equity distribute the resources.
Did the government ever define what big meant in too big to fail?
Yeah. Well, everybody's trying to become not too big to fail. That's this, because if you're too big to fail, then the government effectively owns and runs you. And so I think if a General Motors goes down, is it going to disrupt the economy? Well, any company that goes down is going to disrupt the economy. It would have probably disrupted Michigan, my home state, more so if General Motors had gone bankrupt, but only in the short run.
Yeah.
In the long run, Michigan would have been a more diversified economy, less reliant on automobiles, would have been more dynamic and high tech. And today, they're still sentenced to the misery of the cyclical auto business. And General Motors is simply a government-owned agency. Even though there are public shareholders and the government's ownership has been diluted, it's still regulated. It might as well be owned by the government.
Well, as residents who spent 50 years generationally in Detroit can tell you, right? The flight from that once really great city. How much of this is all powered by the enthronement of the idea of diversity over the idea of competence and excellence? Because the diversity mantra seems to be part of the problem. Like imposing quotas and for the sake of, I guess it's political correctness, writ business environment.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this is going to answer your question, but to me, it's very simple. You have people who have resources and thereby have certain power. Then you have governmental officials who don't have financial resources, but they have political power. And in order to harness financial power, they have to change the system, because the free market's not working for them because they don't have resources and they don't have job creation skills. So what they do is, through government, they try to arrest the control of the financial power through taxation and other programs, and regulation being one of them. And then, of course, what happens is the very people that they're trying to arrest control of, the big business, they become bigger because big business figures out that in order to have the resources they have, they're going to need the political power with them. So they embrace the political power. This is the debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. It's kind of amazing that the debate we're having here, Trump has used the government officials, including Hillary Clinton and her husband himself, and he's saying the system's rigged in favor of him, and then she rigged the system. Well, it's all true, but I mean, it's sort of a hypocrisy. Charles Koch has no use for either of them. His statement is, one is a corporate welfare guy, and the other is a redistributionist. She wants to tax big business, reduce jobs, and use that money to build corporations that the government has influence and control over. That doesn't work. It never has, it never will. People don't have their self-interest when the government is involved, so they just don't work and get paid. So that's what it goes to.
So you're announcing that you're running. Is that it? You're running?
I wish. My wife says absolutely no circumstance running.
Let's turn to the Catholic sphere a little bit and talk about the difference between wealth and success. Jesus Christ seems to have reserved his warnings to the wealthy and his kind of promises of consolations to the poor. Are we to conclude from that the wealthy are automatically suspect and the poor are automatically holy? Because this is kind of a stereotype people have.
Yeah, I think it is. And Jesus also said, it's difficult for a rich man to get to heaven as it is for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle, which he's speaking of the eye of the needle, the door that the camel would go through in a cathedral or a big building. But he says, but with the grace of God, anything's possible. So is a rich person attracted by secular resources and become of this world instead of in this world? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. Without faith, without grace, without the practice of the sacraments in our faith, I'm sure that I would have drifted off. And I've said this publicly. But I didn't. I stayed with the faith. I realized, and I become even a more important role player here of trying to be a witness to being successful, to being wealthy, and to being good. And I think part of that anchor is you've got to redistribute the assets on your own through charity. And the charities have to earn your donations. You don't just give it to them because they want it or they need it.
Right. Look at the judgment scene in Matthew 25, where our Lord says, whenever you did these to the least of my brothers. Well, to give something, you have to have something. If you've got nothing to give, you've nothing to have, and you've nothing to give. So the resources that the poor need have to come from somewhere, and they can't come from other poor people, which is kind of the point. Yeah,
exactly. And I think we have some great things going on in the world, and so to suggest that the free market system isn't still at work and alive. I was just in China for 2 weeks. There's a country that's essentially pagan, but they've embraced the free market system, albeit under a oversight of a communist government, which is oppressive and does not allow for freedom of religion and freedom of speech and such. But still, notwithstanding that, they are thriving financially. They probably even do better. They had what we have, civil rights.
Right. Look at Singapore and Hong Kong. No oil fields there, as far as I know, but high tech and good old human ingenuity have made them lots of problems, a lot of political oppression, and it's not Disneyland, but it seems to put the lie to the belief or the premise that government intrusion and deliberate mandatory redistribution works. Those are two counterexamples, aren't they?
I agree with you 100%. And I think China in 50 years, mainland China will look and feel like Taiwan and Singapore and really Hong Kong has been all along for the last 50 years under British rule.
One of the things that we're doing here with the Patrick Coffin Show platform is to go upstream from politics and education and arguments about gay marriage and abortion and all that, and just go to the formation of the human person. I wanted to ask you about a quote that is often attributed to Mother Teresa, which apparently she did not say. There's the Mother Teresa Center website has a list of things falsely attributed to her, and I'm sure you've heard this before. God has not called me to be successful, he's called me to be faithful. It's sometimes put in different ways. Even if she said it, which it seems that she didn't, there's something off about it. It's almost like there's a fear of success. It's like successophobia. And if you fall short of your mark or you fail, then you kind of throw holy water on on the mediocrity. Do you know what I mean? Of course, we have to be faithful. Right. And of course, we can't look to human fruits alone. But I want to get your thoughts on that. Is there a kind of a nascent successophobia among some Catholics?
Oh, yeah, I think it's prevalent within our faith that somehow you shouldn't be successful. You should be poor as me and humble as me and devout as me. And I think humility is a very important virtue, especially as you become more successful. And I think that's where successful people have kind of given us a bad name, is it's a natural virtue or vice that if you're successful, you go out and say, look at me, look at how great I've done. Right. And the opposite is needed. I mean, we need to be humble. Charles Koch has talked about this a lot, is that humility is everything. And I think he's right. That our faith would agree with that. No one goes out, and there's nothing in any of our teachings that say we should be failing. No, the opposite. We should always do the best. Yeah. And when we do the best, we're gonna be coincide in combination with God, and in prayer with God. We co-create with God. That's really what we're called to do. Co-create with God. And whether you're Catholic or not, you are co-creating with God when you're creating using your intellect, using your resources, and using your zeal and your ambition. This is co-creating. And God is there with us. We didn't just all of a sudden invent the iPhone. Through co-creation, the iPhone came about. And it was a vision, maybe of Steve Jobs and his team, but it was also God's interference with Steve Jobs and co-creation with Steve Jobs that made it possible that revelation would come about to prosper all mankind as a result.
Is this what goes along with market-based management, this MBM idea of finding out what the customer wants? Because really the customer is your boss.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And it's also embracing people at all levels. So with technology now, you don't just have a president and then a COO and CEO, and then down at the bottom, these people that are the day-to-day workers have no role. In their market-based management, you collapse all those hierarchies and you listen to the best idea. And you compensate the people, not based on their base salary, but based on what they've contributed in value to the business. And so if, in my hospitality business, if a housekeeper were to come up with an idea that could save the company $1 million, we would embrace that, we would reward that, and we would use that idea, not say, well, she's a housekeeper, he's a housekeeper, and therefore we don't pay attention to that. And so this really is in accord with Catholic social teaching, because it's embracing all people as having the dignity of a person appointed by God, created by God,
including the team members,
all team members. Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. And
I can't help but notice the stereotype in films and in literature of the wealthy man. Right? You've got Mr. Potter in the greatest movie ever made, I think, is It's a Wonderful Life. He's the richest, meanest guy in the whole county. You've got Ebenezer Scrooge and so on. And then I'm sure you've seen the 80s film Wall Street, where Michael Caine's Gordon Gekko says, greed is good. Is greed good? No, greed is not good. Bad profit is not good, and bad profit would be greed. And that was the 80s, as you recall. Anything goes. It was, I think Ivan Boesky, who that guy was playing, that was, the mantra that built that era. But you realize that it all came crashing down. And I think you've got to build businesses on true values and real people and real products, and not just moving paper from one side of the desk to the other and saying, oh, gosh, I get a commission. And, we got to create real jobs. And we've got to Wall Street, the way Wall Street works is that it incentivizes people on quarterly profits. So as a result, the public markets are such that they are doing things that aren't best interest of the people, best interest of the businesses. This is why private equity, and in the case of the Coke industries, private ownership is more efficient capitalistic system than public ownership. So because they're making long-term investments instead of quarterly investments. Tell me about the new Busch School of Business at Catholic University of America. Why was it founded, and what's the mission?
Well, the Busch School, the business school, as it was originally started in January 2013, it had been a department of arts and sciences, but as you know, Catholic U was formed by Pope Leo, Rerum Novarum, same guy, for the purpose of educating priests and bishops and so on. And business has become a very important subject matter. And the school was the idea of principled entrepreneurship, virtuous capitalism, where in the free market, we need to reform our students so that they're taking into consideration as stewards of the environment, stewards of the team members, capital, the community, and vendors that are not employees, shareholders. So everybody's interest is balanced, and you make decisions based on those collective interests.
This sounds like the business cousin to the inspiration behind the Napa Institute, going with engagement on the cultural, intellectual level. You and Father Robert Spitzer, I've interviewed him many times. A lot of respect for Father Spitzer. What is meant by the next America? Was that drawn from Archbishop Chaput's essay on the coming America, and has it arrived yet?
It's here. And he has a new book coming out, which we're going to be featuring in Napa Institute in the summer of 2017, about this very topic and how the hostilities toward devout Catholics is going to be increased. And so we are in that next America. We're in America that forces us to have insurance, that provide abortions and birth control and things that we don't agree with. Mm-hmm. We're in America that's going to force us to deal with people that are not of traditional marriage. We're in America that, by state, is gradually legislating physician-assisted euthanasia, physician-assisted suicide.
What's happening going forward? What's the strategic plan for the Napa Institute? Is there a 5-year plan, or what is meant to be shaped, and how can people find out more? Well, we have multiple venues. We have our summer conference in Napa, where the name comes from, in July, and then we have symposiums. We're doing one on good prophet in October of 2017. We're doing a pilgrimage in Spain on a Reformation and the 500th anniversary of the Reformation, 100th anniversary of Fatima. We're also doing a conference over in Vienna on Christianity and Islam in Europe with Cardinal Schönborn. So we're trying to get people together, and it's not just about education, but it's about developing relationships among those people, both Catholics, both lay and ordained, and professed. And we're trying to build networks of people who, working together with their ministries, can develop effectively a Catholic subculture that we can hunker down and survive until this culture changes, because it will self-destruct on its own weight. But we have to be there to lift it back out of its ashes when it fails. Well, there's a precedent for the dead coming back to life for 2,000 years now. The church is always being read its own obituary, and that keeps backfiring. Yeah. So I like to say, the church has faced down Diocletian and Nero and Pol Pot and Stalin. We can handle the Democratic Party and the rest of the forces of the culture of death. Tim Busch, I learned a lot. Thanks for joining us on The Patrick Coffin Show.
Hey, thank you, Patrick.
This is The Patrick Coffin Show.